Welcome to the Transfer Portal College Football Podcast, presented by No Context College Football. My name is Dan Keegan. I am here in the Mecca of college football, Brooklyn, New York City. Joining me today is my co-host, Brian Olson. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Dan. It's great to be here with you. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty of the offseason. We're almost there. It's the last month, the last couple of weeks of July, and we get going in August. So very, very exciting stuff. Very exciting coming up. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Best time of the year. Before we get into the content analysis we're going to bring you today, let's run through a few basics. Make sure to follow us at TPortalCFB. That's on Twitter and Instagram. And I believe we're on TikTok. I am well out of the TikTok demographic, but I believe we're on there. So also make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're hosting a giveaway when we reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. All right, so let's get into brass tacks. Today's episode, we are previewing the SEC 2022 season. All right. We have already released conference preview podcasts and videos for the other Power 5 conferences. Go ahead and check that out. Coming up next week, we're going to have the Group of 5 previews. But today is all about God's own conference. It just means more. We have sorted the 14 teams in the league. We have 4 tiers. We're going to go tier by tier, bottom to top. Kind of discussing the state of the program for each team, expectations that those fans and teams have for themselves for this year, key players to know. We're going to talk about breakout players, playoff contenders. We got a few hot takes about the league as well. This is going to be a little inside baseball. As you can tell, I'm a University of Missouri fan. Brian here, tell us about your team. What did they do last year? Well,
you can definitely see by my hat. It was a pretty good year last year for me and my team. Georgia obviously won the national championship the first time in 41 years. So it was definitely a momentous season. So it was cool. I definitely enjoyed that. But we're back to square one. Back to, it only feels good for a little bit. You got to get back on the horse and keep going. So we'll see what happens this year, and hopefully they're poised to repeat. So we'll see what happens.
Congrats. That was a historic team for sure. One theme that we're going to talk about as we kind of run down the league is about these coaches and jobs, whether they're returning or maybe they're a new coach, and the expectations, rising expectations, in fact. How do they go ahead and manage those expectations? Can they meet these expectations that have been set for themselves or they have set? It's harder to have expectations higher than Georgia fans have for their team. And last year, Kirby blew those expectations away with a historic team. So will he and his peers be able to meet their expectations this year in the 2022 season? And that's what we're going to answer. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the lowest tier in the league, the fourth tier of the 4 we've created. Brian, I think you aptly named this tier. The lowest rung on the totem pole is?
Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt tier.
The Vanderbilt tier. I mean, what is there to say? I mean, this is a program that bottomed out in terms of roster, in terms of facilities. But, last year with the hire of Clark Lee, I think that was an interesting hire. Definitely better than some random retread like a Jim Mora Jr. or something like that. So they're going for it. They're rebuilding, but not yet. Check in 2024 for me. So.
No, I mean, yeah, it's really tough. I mean, Vanderbilt, they're probably a glorified FCS team. I mean, they did have a complete coaching and roster overhaul. Back in 2021, they hit the rockiest of bottoms last year. So the good news is it can't get much worse, right? It can't get much worse than what they did last year. They're still an SEC team. Lee will have a full coaching staff and a roster full of talented players, freshmen coming in, kind of start to build that foundation, that stability, moving forward here in 2022 and moving and forward. but still, it's still Vanderbilt. I don't expect them to do pretty much anything. We probably won't win more than 2 or 3 games, maybe if they're lucky 3 or 4. But yeah, so as long as they don't look like an FCS team where they just get blown out by everybody and their team and their stadium is full of the opposing fans, it'll be a successful season in my book. But yeah, it'll be a little bit. So sorry, Vanderbilt fans. Just take the punches and hopefully you'll be back to throwing some few punches moving forward.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. Yeah, definitely.
Don't forget, they did almost beat South Carolina last year. So when we get to South Carolina and people are starting to hype them up, don't forget they did almost beat South Carolina.
Yeah, they did almost beat South Carolina. So, but South Carolina is kind of in that like those other guys tier, you know what I mean? And that's kind of where we move forward. So after Vanderbilt, we go to the other guys that they're almost there. They're not Vanderbilt, but they're also doesn't look like one of those teams where they're going to be at least competing or be exceptional moving forward. So yeah, we could have about 13 teams make bowl games next year. And these are kind of the fringe bowl teams, I think, in my opinion. So let's start with Missouri. Missouri, they regardless of who's at quarterback, I know there's have questions at quarterback. The offense looks so much more improved, and I know that's your team. So it's your team. So you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can throw a punch at me if you want to for what I'm saying. But I think that regardless of what happens at quarterback, they have 4 or 5 starters returning the offensive line. Javon Foster and Hiron Wynn. I think, did I say that right? Hiron Wynn? White. Yeah, Hiron White leading the way. So they're both could be all conference players on the offensive line. So we'll definitely see what they do. Obviously, the splash of the offseason was getting 5-star receiver Luther Burden III. He joins Dominic Lovett and Mookie Cooper. So it's a very formidable wide receiver core for Missouri. So the offensive foundation is there. I think with Nathaniel Pete, joining the fold from Stanford, and then you also have Cody Schrader. He comes from a D2 school. He rushed over 1,000 yards last year, so he's a talented player. You could see Missouri, their offense carry them to maybe 6 wins, or maybe a little bit more than 6 wins. So they're at that fringe bowl level, in my opinion. So what about you, Dan? What do you think about your Tigers coming up?
I mean, without turning this into an hour-long Missouri podcast, which I could easily do, I agree. I mean, it's July, right? And I'm a fan. So why not be optimistic in July? If you can't look at your team and see the absolute heights in July, why even be a fan? So, my absolute most optimistic view is maybe 8 or 9 wins. There are a number of toss-up games on the schedule, of course. Florida, South Carolina, K-State. You get a couple of those coin flips. You're going to lose to Georgia, but you're going to beat Abilene Christian. But you get a few of those coin flips, and you're looking at 8 wins instead of 5, and it's a good year. Drinkwitz has been recruiting like gangbusters for Missouri standards, and you already mentioned Luther Burden, but he's going to be an impact player the moment he steps on the field as an SEC player. Reminds me of when Macklin, as a freshman, Jeremy Macklin in 2007 stepped on the field and was instantly one of the best receivers in the Big 12 that year. So very similar kind of impact. Another guy from St. Louis as well. The defense was a disaster in the first half of the season last year. You just remember Tennessee, Texas A&M just handing the ball off and just getting 60-yard untouched rushing touchdowns. Things really tightened up in the second half of the year. The guys kind of came together. There's a huge influx of portal talent in the front 7. There's both a Tyrone Hopper and Tyrone Hopper cousins, one from UNC and one from Florida, both edge rushers. So that'll be some impact guys, a couple guys from the Big 12 as well. So the defense will not be as bad, but last year I think it was power ranked in like the 120s, 110s in the FBS. It was a disaster. So just get around the 60s, offense maybe around the 30s, and you're looking at in the SEC, a good 7-win team. That's my view. So who's quarterback? I don't know. We'll find out. Could be Brady Cook. Could be Jack Abraham. Could be Tyler Macon, fan favorite, 4-star from a couple years ago. But we'll see. But I also love that you shout out Nathaniel Pete, transfer from Stanford. There are a lot of Tyler Beatty carries to replace, a lot. Drinkwitz in his head coaching career has really leaned on having an RB1, a workhorse guy. Nathaniel Pete, the transfer, looks to be, and a Columbia native. He's from right there, Columbia, Missouri. He looks to be the guy to step in and repeat and be that workhorse for the Drinkwitz offense. A big game on the Missouri schedule is going to be that game against South Carolina. That will determine a lot for both of those programs, as that's kind of like right there your peer level. So this is a program that it's really about, they're raising these expectations. Shane Beamer is with the bowl season last year, the Duke's Mayo win, if you remember the Mayo bath.
Yeah.
Awful. And doing great work in the portal and just getting a lot of hype in that program. But this is not a team that can compete in the trenches just yet. Spencer Rattler is a great signee at quarterback, but he's a little erratic for my taste for leading a program. And I don't know. I'm not sure the talent level is there to meet the expectations that they're starting to get in some of the preseason sleeper hype. They have some good players, like I said, like Rattler, like the big tight end. I'm absolutely drawing a blank on his name right now. And defensive back Cam Smith is one of the best defensive backs in this entire conference. But I don't know. It kind of feels to me like the best case scenario is Rattler plays really well, puts up a bunch of big stats, but the team overall doesn't win a ton of games because, they just get outcompeted in the trenches week in and week out in this league. They have Clemson out of conference. They have A&M. They have Georgia. You're talking about 3 top 10 teams right off the bat. And Rattler puts up big numbers, and it's kind of like a Nick Foles on Arizona situation. That is, to me, is kind of like the best case scenario. If they lose some of those coin flip games, it could be worse than that. And I think Beamer is doing good things, but raising expectations this early before the foundation is really built kind of scares me a little bit in terms of how people perceive the 2022 season.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of going to see, how Shane Beamer really kind of carries that momentum from last year. And I think Shane Beamer brought new life to the program last year. He was a perfect hire for that team. And, they, like you said, they shocked pretty much everybody by winning the 7 games and winning the Mayo Bowl. And you kind of alluded to it, the jury's out on Spencer Rattler, right? What are we going to get from Spencer Rattler? What Spencer Rattler are we going to get ultimately? Are we going to get the one that got benched for Caleb Williams and was throwing interceptions and was erratic on the field? Or are we going to get that guy that was projected to be a Heisman finalist or a number 1 overall pick at the beginning of last season? Who are we going to get? What kind of Spencer Rattler are we playing? Is going to be out there on the field? And, they did bolster up the roster. They, like you mentioned, it comes down to the trenches, though. That's definitely where, this South Carolina team is either going to live or die. If they can keep Spencer Rattler upright, they can give him the chance to throw, they could win 8 or 9 games. But if they can't, and if he can't stay healthy or if he can't stay upright and they can't pass rush or on the opposite side of the ball, it's not going to be a very good season for them. So yeah, I mean, they have Clemson on the schedule, they have Georgia on the schedule, they have Missouri, and it's kind of the same. It's kind of I don't know how
we made that threesome, but
yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah, look like Missouri and South Carolina and these teams that are in this kind of fringe tier. Their biggest flaw is that they play in the SEC and they have to play Georgia, they have to play Alabama's, they have to play these types of Texas A&M, these types of teams once a year. So that's really going to kind of be the tipping point, I think, in my opinion. So if everything goes right for them, I think they can win 8 or 9 games, but that's a big if everything can go right for them. So, and another team that's kind of in that level for me is Mississippi State. Look, Mississippi State, I can honestly see Mississippi State winning 10 games, but at the same time, I could see them win 4 games. Mike Leach is one of those guys where he's going to squeeze every little thing out of his offense that he can, and that's pretty much what he does. They're gonna go out there, they're gonna pass for a bunch of yards, they're gonna they should score a lot of points. But is it going to be enough for them? And he's bringing in one of the most experienced rosters. The good thing is he is bringing one of the most experienced rosters in the SEC. They finished top 30 in offense last year, and they finished top 30 in defense last year as well. That was kind of their downfall the last couple of seasons with Mississippi State. They had very unexperienced roster. They were one of the youngest teams in the SEC West the last couple of seasons, but now it kind of flips on them for a little bit. They're kind of one of the most experienced teams. Will Rogers is coming back again. He had a great he put up a lot of great offensive numbers last year. So there is potential for Mississippi State with Mike Leach at the helm to really, like I said, squeeze as much offense they can and win some of these games. Maybe could they upset a team like Alabama, or if they even get a chance to play Georgia, maybe we'll see what happens. But with that type of offense, anything can happen. So I think that we kind of have to keep an eye out for Mississippi a little bit. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty high on this Mississippi State team. They actually do draw you guys. They have.
That's right. They do play them this year. Yep.
As their cross division game, which that's a tough look for Mississippi State. You're already looking at one of the toughest divisions in the sport, the toughest division of sport. Then you draw the champs from the other side. They also have a very weird game. They go to Arizona, who isn't going to be very good, I don't think. But that's in September. It's going to be 11 o'clock, 8 o'clock local kick, but 11 o'clock body clock. Have 11 p.m. body clock for the Mississippi State players. So that could get weird. I don't know. But overall, I do like Mississippi State. Their defense has been really underrated the last couple of years. This isn't like Leach's Texas Tech teams that were, basketball scores. Like this, they do play some D. They got Jordan Davis coming back on the defensive line. Not that one. He was a monster in 2020 towards ACL missile last year. They have Tyrus Wheat, a linebacker, one of the best backers in this league. So I do think they're gonna be interesting. They're gonna surprise. I'm buying in on the Mississippi State Bulldogs for 2022. Last year they lost a couple close games because of just a garbage special teams effort, up and down on Bill Connolly's SP Plus efficiency ratings. Their special teams was 125th out of 130 in FBS. Only 5 worse. So they have a grad transfer kicker and a grad transfer punter coming in. That'll make those difference in those close games and that peer level in the SEC West. Somebody has to finish last in this division, and I don't think it's these guys. I think they're gonna have a good year. A lot has been made about losing Charles Cross, the stud left tackle. I believe he was a first-round NFL pick, right? I'm not a big NFL guy, but I think he was a first-round, like Thursday night, heard his name called. But and then they lost the right tackle as well. But honestly, in the Leach scheme, a great tackle is just icing on the cake. That system uses those kind of wider splits and the quick dropbacks, quick releases to protect quarterbacks just as much as a great blindside tackle. So even though they're going to miss, their Charles Cross is a great player, I'm not sure that's going to have a huge impact that missing him would, impact other teams. I think that's got a team with a lot of core identity. They know what they're doing every Saturday. They know what they want to do. So
exactly right. Yeah,
I'm predicting them for 8 or 9 wins. I think that's a good team. Also on that peer level, the other guys, we have the LSU Tigers. To me, this is a incredible unknown. I mean, what can you say? First year under Brian Kelly, right? I also think Auburn is another team that's going to be a crazy unknown. But these two, it's just, what do you say? Somebody has to finish last in the West, right? Like I said, it was these guys last year. I don't think it'll be them this year. The roster really cratered out. Remember in the bowl game, they had 39 scholarship players in the bowl game. But, the good news is LSU recruits at such a level that, it's not like if my Missouri Tigers bottomed out to 39 roster players, it would take a decade to build that back. LSU, Brian Kelly's been aggressive in the portal. He's got a guy like Keishon Butte, who just announced today, actually, he's going to be wearing the 7, the famous LSU 7. BJ Ojulari, really great defender, one of the great players in this league. I don't know. I think that this is a team that could surprise just because there's enough star power there. They got a 5-star left tackle that early enrolled and has already won the starting left tackle job. That's impressive. Will Campbell. So if they can go out and compete with a really good ball coach, I mean, Brian Kelly, all the memes, all the jokes, my family and all that, the dancing, all that aside, the guy can coach, man. And if he gets this roster up, this is a team that could, scare some of the people that should be contenders in this league.
Yeah, no, you said it. You said it there, great, Dan. We're far, how the mighty have fallen, right? We're far removed from that 15-0 record-breaking team with Joe Burrow winning the Natty. It feels like that was forever ago, but it was only like 3 years ago. So, with Brian Kelly coming in, we're going to see exactly who Brian Kelly is. At Notre Dame, it's Notre Dame. It's a historic program, but it's not the SEC. There's nowhere to hide in the SEC. If you don't perform, if you don't play well, if your team doesn't play well, it will be known and everybody will know. So it's kind of interesting to see what Brian Kelly will put out there on a weekly basis. There's a lot of roster turnover, and there's a lot of holes on that roster as well. But they do have a very light start of the schedule. They play Southern, I think, to start the season, and they have New Mexico early on. So by the time they get to Auburn, there could be 4-0, and we have those questions about Auburn, which we will get to, kind of a segue there. But they could head into Auburn undefeated, and if they do end up winning Auburn, they could be bowl eligible before they really hit the bulk of their schedule. So, if everything goes well, if they can put it together, you talked about those guys, BJ Ojulari, Will Campbell, Butte. So if those guys can really get it together and kind of start plugging these holes early on in the season against those teams that are far superior to them, they could definitely kind of make their way into maybe double-digit wins. Definitely a 6-win team. They could be, like I said, bowl eligible by the time they hit the bulk of their schedule. So that's if they can get it together. And it all starts with that game against Auburn in week 5. It's week 5, I think it is, when they play Auburn. So, speaking of Auburn, that's our next team. They're kind of going to be battling it out, like you said. Who's going to finish? Somebody has to finish last, right? You said in the SEC West. And as a diehard Auburn hater, I am happy to say that things are not looking good down there for the Eagles, and not the Eagles, the Tigers of Auburn. They have Eagles.
It's easy to get that.
Yeah, right. Like, what are you? Or Eagle? Or you Tigers? What are you? You don't even know what your own mascot is. So, yeah. So Brian Harsin, should be on a very, very short leash this season. Following that offseason drama, sleeping with this intern and yelling at players and cussing out coaches. So yeah, it's a very weird offseason for Brian Harsin and that Auburn program. So who's gonna play quarterback? We have TJ Finley from LSU, Calzada from A&M, who technically I would say technically did beat Alabama. So there's a lot of questions there, but I just have no hope for Auburn. There isn't much to be excited about outside of, they do have Tanks Bigsby, but outside of that, the offense is littered with holes and the offense isn't much better. I'm not very optimistic with Auburn. I could see them starting out pretty poorly and then they fire Harsin and then maybe rally to, usually when there's a coaching change, a lot of teams tend to rally and win a couple of games after that. So maybe can reach bowl eligibility. But yeah, I don't have much hope for the Tigers this coming season at all.
Yeah. I think that intern rumor was like debunked as kind of message board nonsense.
Was it really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I like somebody just trying to kickstart more controversy and accelerate the firing process. I feel like let's not put ourselves in position here to get sued, but yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons to be kind of down on this team, even if there are a few stars around, on the roster, but just like the buy-in level just seems real low. Just in the locker room, a lot of guys hit the portal this offseason. Obviously at the fan base, at the regular level of the fan base, the booster level of the fan base is clearly not happy with this guy. The administration just doesn't seem like people in Auburn have his back. And then if things start off weird, then yeah, he could be out by the Clay Helton program, right? Like out by October. And of course, my favorite current hot take theory is Missouri week 4. Missouri has had a track record of taking trophies in this league because people do not like to lose to the new guy, the Yankees. Dan Mullen, that was his last game. Derek Mason, Butch Jones. So you lose to Missouri, you might find yourself out on the street in the SEC. So they got Penn State coming into town in week 3, and then if that gets dicey, and then the next week Missouri, if that gets dicey. This is a fun little exercise for me. I don't know if we'll beat Auburn, but it's fun to pretend. Like I said, they still have some star players. Bigsby, like you mentioned, just a horse in the backfield. And his backfield mate, Jarquez Hunter, a freshman, had like 7 yards of carry last year as a freshman. He kind of faded down the stretch as a young guy in the SEC. But I think the two of them are going to have the best backfield combo in the league. But where else is there impact players? I guess Derek Hall on the edge. I'm with you. I think this gets dicey. Somebody has to finish last in the West, and I think it might be these guys. A program that is just starting, just fired their coach, is Florida. Got rid of Dan Mullen. Didn't like the way that was going. Again, another kind of culture fit. Just seemed off from the start. Just wasn't making a lot of friends down there in Gainesville. When the losses start coming, it's easy to cut ties in that regard. So Billy Napier's been a little open in this new job that it's more of a roster rebuild than people realize. He has said kind of publicly over and over again that he doesn't have a lot of depth. He likes some of his stars, but that there's no depth there. Trying to manage the expectations, lower them a little bit. Some of the other blockbuster new hires like Kelly, like we talked about, or obviously famously Lincoln Riley, are going out there and just aggressive in the portal to build a year one team in free agency, so to speak. But Napier has been the opposite. He's kind of like slow played it a little bit and get back, develop those Florida relationships and build this through high school pipelines and player development, which is the healthier way to build a program. So I don't know. Napier said it himself that there's not a lot of depth there. Anthony Richardson's taken over the QB job. If he's the real deal, and I mean like the real deal, like his physical talent has shown that he's like a game breaker, right? And he's kind of hinted at that with his flashes of greatness on the field. But he's also been really inconsistent, some signs of immaturity. Emory Jones wasn't a world beater, and he didn't really beat him out last year. So I just kind of wonder if this guy is the real deal and he's a superstar that raises that ceiling for this program early before they have the kind of roster that they want built up. If he's kind of a bust, this is a team that could actually be a step behind down there in that Missouri, South Carolina level of the division. They won't fall into the Vanderbilt tier. Not that's a reserved parking, but definitely a lot rides on Anthony Richardson developing into a superstar.
Yeah, you kind of hit all the points there. I don't think Florida will compete in I almost at the NL East, which we're both a part of. So there's that baseball talk kind of filtering in a little bit. I don't think Florida will compete in the East. Sure, Billy Napier I think is an upgrade over Dan Mullen. I think Dan Mullen, he kind of knew. I mean, he phoned it in towards the end. He knew that it just wasn't going to work. I think there was an interview with some of the players who said that out towards the end, he just kind of stopped caring. He stopped disciplining the players. He stopped really caring about practice. So yeah, I think Bill Napier should kind of change the culture a little bit. But I just don't think the stability's there, at least not yet. Richardson is hit or miss. Sure, he does have that star quality type a player and that type of skill level that he could end up being, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. But he was very hit or miss last year. He had trouble throwing the ball. He threw like untimely interceptions, kind of head scratcher throws, down the stretch. And yeah, I don't think they don't have a roster that scares anybody. They have a lot of trouble. They've had a lot of trouble with the recruiting, this past recruiting cycle and then 2023 recruiting cycle. So I just don't think there's a roster that the roster is there that scares anybody, especially in the East. I think there's better teams in the East that we'll get to in a little bit. So I just don't think they make much noise. I think they're kind of below, obviously Georgia, Tennessee, and then this next team that we're going to talk about, which is Kentucky. I think Kentucky is way better than Florida. And speaking of, really getting into Kentucky, I really, really like this Kentucky team. I have for a couple of years now. They've constantly gotten better. The other Kelly, Coach Kelly from Kentucky, he's gotten them better year after year. Will Levis comes back. He's has another year under his belt. He was also kind of that hit or miss last year, but he did show flashes last year. Chris Rodriguez comes back. This offense is very, very good, in my opinion. And if anybody's going to compete against Georgia, I think it's either Kentucky or Tennessee, which we'll get to in a little bit. Those are the two teams that can compete, I think, with Georgia. So the defense is just very, very solid. And I think they fall a game short of the division, but I do like this Kentucky team a lot. Okay.
I think I do too. I think the blueprint is there to be in the second in the East this year. But they won double-digit games last year. But I also could see the blueprint for how it doesn't work out this year. Another team we're talking about managing expectations. These are probably the most manageable expectations in this league, the Kentucky football fan base. Got to cut one of the coaches in that fan base a slack because they're already talking about trying to run Calipari out of town. But each year it seems like Mark Stoops just inches those expectations up, inches them up with another great year. At some point, he's going to fall short of the expectations, right? At some point. It could be this year. I think on the one hand, there's not a ton of talent in the trenches. They lost a ton of guys on the O-line. They have good recruits on the D-line, but again, lost a lot of guys on the D-line. But there aren't proven names there. Great linebacker room. Really, really good linebacker squad with Weaver and Square and Jacquez Jones. So the offense, I think, will be good. But if you take away Will Levis' security blanket and Wan'Dale Robinson off to the league, maybe Will Levis isn't the guy that we saw in that hot streak for the last month. Maybe he's the guy that he has been his whole career, but he couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State. Wasn't that good in the first couple months last year, and then he obviously caught fire at the end. Chris Rodriguez is great. That's no question. But maybe the offense isn't as good as it was last year. Maybe the trenches aren't as good. Maybe they come up a little bit short from the expectations that Stoops has somehow incredibly built. But on the other hand, maybe they do have the highest, recruiting kind of pipeline they've had in recent years, and they replace those guys up front. Will Levis is the real deal. That what we saw at the end of last year was the real deal. Chris Rodriguez is the best back in the league. The defensive culture has been great now under Stoops for the last 5 or 6 years. So I don't know. I think I'm going to vote coming up just short of expectations. When you got to make these choices on some of these coin flip teams, I think I'm a little higher on Tennessee than Kentucky. I'm a little higher on Missouri than South Carolina. I'm a little higher than Mississippi State than Mississippi. So, you just kind of got to pick and choose these peers. For this one, I think I'm a little higher on Tennessee than I am Kentucky.
Oh, I agree, definitely.
Okay, so speaking of Tennessee, they are the one of the first teams in our sleepers tier. These are teams that are just shy of the real big dogs in the conference, but could put a scare on them, could make some noise, could run into a New Year's Six bowl. So Tennessee, again, rising expectations, but we've seen this cycle with the Volunteers, right? A new coach comes in, win some games, get some hype, get some recruits, and then kind of flames out. Is Josh Heupel on that path? One way that he is zigging the way some of the past Tennessee coaches have zagged is he does run a modern, hyper up-tempo, all gas, no brakes kind of offense. To me, Tennessee is like an old school man ball kind of league, a kind of team in this league. I don't know. That's what I've always thought of as Tennessee being like. So a new identity for this program. But anyway, they've got those expectations raised. If they're going to shatter through them this year, which I believe they can, they have to get off the field on third down. Last year in third down, they were atrocious. 103rd ranking on third down defensive percentage. That doesn't work. That does not work. So they can get off the field on third downs a little more. Then I think this is one of the best offenses in the league. Hendon Hooker is fantastic. Cedric Tillman is an absolute monster outside. The line is good. And, the defense, if they can make some improvement. Have you seen linebacker Jeremy Banks? Have you watched that guy play? He is just a wild man, just an incredibly aggressive player. Just a joy to watch at that position. But I really think that this team breaks through. The Heupel offense is interesting. If you can outmatch it in terms of just talent one-on-one, especially out there on the perimeter, and not very teams can do that with the kind of players that Heupel's going to get at Tennessee compared to what he used to get at UCF and Missouri. If you can outmatch it, you can shut it down with the one-on-one, taking stuff away on the outside. If you can't, if that's even talent, they have a schematic advantage, and they're going to take advantage of that. But then if they have the advantage over you, that offense takes care of business. So I think some of these teams that slow the game down a lot, kind of grind things out, makes them a little more susceptible to an upset. Tennessee is not going to get upset. They put points on the board. They're going to take care of business. Now the question is, are they going to put a fright in some of the contenders in the league?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I like this team a lot as well. Probably the one team, and so on the SEC East side, obviously the litmus test is Georgia, right? That's who they're reaching. Georgia's dominated this division for years, so I think that's kind of like the litmus that you're trying to get to. So yeah, I do like this team a lot. I think they're probably the only team that could. That kind of scares me as a Georgia fan on the schedule. They were the only team that scared me last year because we were we played at Rocky Top against a pretty good Tennessee team. I think they're going to be even better this year. So luckily they do play in Athens this year. So that upset factor kind of gets taken away a little bit because it is in Athens, but that doesn't mean that they can't win. I do like this team a lot. They could give Georgia the most trouble. They could have one of those years that Arkansas had last year where they kind of just really started off really, really strong, beat a lot of good teams, was ranked in the top 10, and then just kind of fizzled out towards the end. They lost a couple of close games. Obviously, they lost to Georgia. Arkansas speaking, they lost to Georgia, and then they lost to Auburn in that last second touchdown last year. So, they have that potential. If everything gets put together, and you asked if I've seen Jeremy Banks play. Yes, he is a beast. I saw him last year, obviously against Georgia, and then just in other games he played in. He is very athletic. He's
Wild,
very
man.
smash. Yeah, with smash mouth football, man. That guy could it's almost dangerous. How they say how Baker Mayfield left to say he's feeling dangerous. He's a very dangerous player in a good way, not in any negative connotation. He's a very good player. So I think that if they can put everything together, and like you said, they're very. They could go out there and have one of those keep away games where they keep the ball, they score points, and then their defense just kind of prevents the opposing offense from scoring, and they just kind of run away and play keep away and win one of those 17-14 type games or 17-10 type games. So they could find themselves in that conversation if they can win some of these games. And obviously the biggest test will be Georgia. So I still think they're a tick behind Georgia. But I definitely feel like we need to watch out for Tennessee. They could be poised for a very, very good season. And another team that is kind of in that same, I feel like they could break out, they could really have a good season, is Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, Zach Evans, and Lane Kiffin. Enough said. That's all that element that Ole Miss brings to the table this year is just gonna skyrocket. They already have a lot of momentum come in. They finished 10-3 last year. Lane Kiffin he got awarded with a contract extension. He made Matt Corral look like a potential first-round draft pick. Obviously, he fizzled out at the end, but he played extremely well. He's a quarterback guru, and we all know what Lane Kiffin brings to the table. So we definitely need to see how that's going to transition. Now, I think Jackson Dart is definitely a better quarterback than Matt Corral is. Is he going to start immediately? We still don't know. Luke Altmaier, he was the backup last year, so he still kind of he knows the offense better, but all signs point to Jackson Dart being the starter. Obviously, Zach Evans as the running back, can definitely, bring in that new. We saw what he did at TCU, and Ole Miss's offense is way better than TCU, so he can bring that new element to that team and that offense. And they've restocked their receiving cores. So Michael Trigg as well, the tight end who came with Jackson Dart from USC. So they have that kind of familiarity. So with this offense alone and Lane Kiffin, they could definitely be up there and compete with Texas A&M and compete with Alabama. And, if the chips fall the right way, Ole Miss could definitely find themselves in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. So I think we need to watch out for Ole Miss. They'll definitely put up enough points to be up there.
Okay. I think we've agreed on a lot of the teams. I'm not buying in on the Ole Miss hype this year.
Wow. Okay.
A lot of people seem to be, putting them through. You are for sure. I'm just not sure. They just lost so much, and what they're doing is such an experiment that I'm just not willing to buy in just yet. This kind of free agency, aspect to building a program, building a roster, we haven't yet seen it work. They lost a ton last year. They really did. Sam Williams, All-American defensive tackle. A lot of other guys around the roster. And, Matt Corral, the greatest quarterback in program history without the last name Manning, right? And, a couple of great receivers and backs too. Zach Evans is in the former 5-star from TCU. He was great last year out there in flyover country, but this is the SEC now. So no, he's a good player. But Michael Trigg, also a good player. But I'm just not sure. I'd rather bet on some of the teams that have built rosters the typical way, that have that identity, that culture, like Arkansas, like Mississippi State, guys that have been together in the room for multiple years, rather than a group of free agents. The one thing that does break in their favor is the schedule. If you're going to do this, if you're going to go in free agency, try to build chemistry in a matter of just a few months, you want a schedule like this. The Ole Miss schedule literally is a tale of two halves. The first half of the schedule, their 6 easiest games are their first 6 games. Their second half of the schedule, their 6 toughest games. Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Tulsa, Kentucky, and Vandy. That's 6-0. That should be 6-0. If that's 4-2, that tells me the experiment's not working. But that's 6-0. You get that. You develop that chemistry. You don't have to kind of fight through adversity or clean up the locker room after a tough week 3 loss, that kind of thing. So you build that chemistry through the first half of the season, and then you get into the tough games where your money's made in the SEC. And maybe that's the setup for this experiment to work. I don't know. It might work because of that, but I'm not buying in like you are. So give me
trust Lane Kiffin, baby. You have to trust Lane Kiffin.
That is not a sentence that you want to take to the bank.
Definitely.
It felt like you spent half the offseason trying to get out of there anyway. So,
yeah.
I know he's back, but I don't know how happy he is about that. But like I said, I like that. I like the established culture. That's what I like. And is there a better culture in the league than Arkansas right now, outside of Tuscaloosa and Athens? Is there a better culture? I mean, honestly, Sam Pittman took 2 years to get this program to the identity that this team has. You know, they're big, they're physical, they're going to beat you up. They don't take a play off. Sam Pittman got this there in 2 years. Just done an incredible job there. And so I'm buying in for that reason. The big picture is already answered. You know, we talk about guys up and down this league, like, do they have the quarterback? Do they have the new coordinator? All kinds of questions like that. They have the best coordinating pair in the league with Kendall Briles on offense and Barry Odom on defense. And they've both been there multiple years. The culture is rock solid. They have a veteran returning quarterback team leader, KJ Jefferson, that everybody in that locker room, in that town, in that state is bought in KJ Jefferson. And yeah, so the floor is high because of all those big questions, those big picture questions being answered already. So then you're just looking at little things, you know, they need a couple defensive line players to emerge. You know, they need to replace most of Treylon Burks' production. They can replace most of it with Jadon Hazelwood, transfer from Oklahoma, and Trey Knox, also transfer tight end. They can replace most of that production. Then you're just looking at some of the smaller things on the roster. Another linebacker to step up next to Bumper Pool. The safety is one of the best defensive backs in the league. Catalan, right? The safety there. So,
right.
Yeah, I think they got the big questions figured out. They figured out some of the small things in fall practice. And this is a team that I think is going to finish third in this division.
Yeah, I'm very high on Arkansas as well. And for a lot of the points that you made, you know, KJ Jefferson, you know, what they did last year with KJ Jefferson under center was night and day of what they had previously at quarterback. And I think Sam Pittman, you know, obviously, you know, my Georgia bias always comes out no matter what. And what he did to the offensive line at Georgia, and it shows. It bleeds into this Arkansas program. Very tough, very physical, very, you know, tough dudes on both sides, and not just on the offensive line, but just everywhere around the field. And with Jadon Hazelwood coming in, I think that he you know, Jadon Hazelwood, he was a number one receiving recruit coming out of high school. You know, he went into that Oklahoma program expected to do a lot of things, and you know, a fresh start might be what's best for him, honestly, at Arkansas. And he has the ability to take the mantle of what Burks, you know, that departing what Burks left behind. So I definitely agree with you 100% on everything that you've mentioned. I think the biggest test would be, can they win the close games? They had a lot of toss-up games last year. They won a couple of them, but they also lost a few of those games last year where they just couldn't finish. And we spoke about that game against Auburn that happened last year. They couldn't finish games. So that's going to be the biggest test for them. If they can finish these games and win these toss-up games and stay close to some of these teams, they could definitely be in the conversation. Can they beat Alabama? Probably not. Can they beat Texas A&M? Maybe. They beat them last year, but, you know, we'll get to Texas A&M in just a little bit. But, you know, yeah, I feel like they're definitely in the conversation for sure. And if all the chips fall, just like we talked about a little bit earlier, if all the chips fall in their favor for Arkansas, they could find themselves in that conversation and go into the last couple of weeks of the season in contention to represent the SEC West in Atlanta. So and speaking of the team that we just mentioned, Texas A&M, is there a team with more hype around them than Texas A&M? It's a legitimate hype though. I feel like it's now or never for them. Sure, you know, they do have the number one recruiting class of all time, you know, which is crazy. In the era of the NIL, they've managed to pull in the number one recruiting class of all time under Jimbo Fisher. So, you know, it's going to be an experiment, I think, in my opinion, for Texas A&M. You know, they they have to show that they can compete with Georgia, with Alabama. And obviously they beat Alabama last year, but more in a general sense, who's going to start at quarterback? Obviously, Zach Calzada transferred to Auburn. So they bring in Max Johnson, who I think could be that perfect replacement for them. Obviously, Haynes King, who was the backup last year, he's in the fold. And then they do have the 5-star commit in Connor Weigman. So I think Max Johnson is going to be that difference maker for them that they did not have last year. I think obviously Weigman is a long-term option, but for next season, Max Johnson is a perfect kind of bridge to Connor Weigman. And, obviously they lost Isaiah Spiller last year, who was one of the better running backs in the SEC and in the country. But who's going to replace that? Devon Achane, he's kind of been the name to watch for the Aggies. So, and how many of those number one players or those 5-star recruits that they picked up are going to contribute? And that's going to be the biggest question for me. They beefed up the offensive line, and the pieces are in place for Texas A&M to break out. And in my opinion, like I mentioned, it's now or never for Jimbo Fisher. You've proven you can win a national championship. He's a national championship winning coach at Florida State. With talent, he wins games. So now you have the talent, and now you have the kind of the foundation that you've built. You kind of have the momentum. You kind of have the hype, and now it's time to put it together. And I can't see if it doesn't work. Like where do they go from there? So I think now it's almost a championship or bust season for Texas A&M, in my opinion. Alabama, sure, they're Alabama, but they're not. They can be beat, and you've proven that they can be beat. So again, it's now or never for Jimbo Fisher and A&M, and it's put up or shut up time.
Yeah, it feels like anytime all the offseason buzz about Texas A&M is always Jimbo Fisher this, Jimbo Fisher that, Jimbo Fisher contract, Jimbo Fisher's recruiting class, Jimbo Fisher claps back at Nick Saban. And maybe he likes it that way. Maybe he's kind of doing that Nick Saban rat poison thing where he knows that he's got a lot of hype on this roster with this recruiting that they've been doing the last couple of years. And maybe he's trying to get the hype away from them so they're not buying in too early before they've actually accomplished anything. I mean, other than beating Alabama. But so maybe he's just trying to get some of the, play that card. Hey guys, they don't believe in you yet. They're just talking about me and about expectations. Nobody believes that we can actually do this. Maybe he's doing one of those old Saban playbook kind of things. But just a lot of just all the conversation is always around Jimbo Fisher. But honestly, this is a really, really, really good roster. This is a top 10 roster in the league, in the sport. And it starts with Devon Achane, like you talked about. I think he's going to be great. He averaged something like 8 yards a carry last year, backing up Spiller. He might be the fastest skill guy in the league. Just a track star at the running back position. He's going to put up monster numbers, especially because we know Fisher does like to go a little conservative sometimes and just feed that running game, especially to protect the lead, which I think is one of the big question marks there. You really need an explosive pass offense. You need that verticality to step on teams' necks. So we talk about A&M, that big win last year, incredible. They finished 8-4. They lost 4 games where they were the favorites. 4 games as favorites. You need an explosive passing offense to put teams away. If they can develop that, it might not be because it's a great gunslinger QB. It might be just because of the number of 5 stars in that wide receiver room. So if they can put points up on the board like a modern contending team does, Clemson kind of fell backwards into the Deshaun Watson era. They weren't scoring these crazy numbers up until, the Watson and then Lawrence era. Maybe they just fall into it with the amount of talent. Jimbo's not trying to put up 48 points on you, but he just can't help it because of the wide receivers and the track stars. So we'll see. If they can play aggressive, put teams away, they have the roster to be a playoff contender here. They're just blue chippers up and down on the lines, defensive line. That's obviously where the hype is with the 5 stars. But, yeah, the thing that I keep thinking about is, Jimbo's raised these expectations. It's time to go out and do it. You watch The Wire, HBO's The Wire.
I didn't. No, I haven't seen it. I've heard a lot of good things though.
In season 1, the lawyer, the smarmy lawyer, says to one of his clients, "Oh, you wanted to be in the game? Now you're in the game." And that's kind of what I think for Jimbo Fisher. You wanted to be in the game? Now you're in the game. Time to go win some hardware.
Yep.
Speaking of a team that has won some hardware, that is the 2 teams that make up our contenders. So we're out of the sleepers tier, and we're into the tier of 2, the contenders. And blocking Texas A&M's way, we have the Alabama Crimson Tide. And what do you say, right? Since Nick Saban got the battle station fully armed and operational in 2008, they have lost 2 regular season games only twice. And this isn't another year. They're not making it 3 this year. So this team is just incredible. It might be his best pure roster. He didn't need to, but he went into the portal and added 5 blue chippers. And that's just incredible. So I guess they just needed more talent for funsies. But you got Jermaine Burton, I think, coming over from Georgia, is going to be a breakout contender there, replacing a lot of what Mechie and Williams did on the outside. But yeah, they have studs everywhere. Will Anderson, best player in the country. Bryce Young, best or second best quarterback in the country. Jahmyr Gibbs, could put up numbers that look like, Henry and, some of those studs that they've had back there, Derrick Henry and that they've had in those backfields, Ingram. I don't, there's no weakness here. Battle in the secondary, Dallas Turner, the bookend pass rush there with Will Anderson. Yeah, it's just a great team. Nick Saban's the GOAT. And the crazy thing of the X factor is, like, Alabama kicking and special teams has always been such a meme. Their weakness, going back to the Iron Bowl where they missed a couple field goals. But Saban just said enough of that and went out and got a really, really great special teams coordinator, Coleman Holzer. He's been I think he actually got a Broyles Award nomination one year as a special teams guy. And I feel like that usually just goes to headliner offensive and defensive coordinators. So this is a guy that's coordinated great special teams for the last decade all around the country. So that's going to be good too. So they fixed the port and the thermal exhaust shaft. There's nothing the Death Star can't do. Yeah, no,
you said it well at the end there. They're definitely the evil empire. They just never go away. It's when is it going to be over, right? When are we going to finally get rid of this pest that has been the Alabama Crimson Tide? It's so annoying, but I'm not as upset because we're the ones who ended up with this past season. So it was great to finally see them topple the. Definitely felt like Luke Skywalker toppling the evil empire there. So. But no, I mean, everything you said is right. I mean, they feels like a lot like the Alabama Crimson Tide is a lot like the Los Angeles Dodgers, but but they actually win championships. The Dodgers don't ever win; they win once. But they're this team that everybody hates. They have all this roster, all this talent on their roster, and then what do? What do the Dodgers do? They have all these MVPs on the team, but what do? They go on and get Freddie Freeman, right? So. Yeah. Who? Freddie? Who is that? Only one of the best, probably the best first baseman in Major League Baseball, who left the team that he beat and won a World Series ring with, and just for fun. They don't need Freddie Freeman, but they got him anyway. And it's like Alabama. You said it with Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton was the best receiving option, or let me rephrase it. They were the best wide receiving option. Obviously. Brock Bowers was the best receiver in general for Georgia, but he was their best receiver on the team and was a big part of that national championship team. He goes out there and beats Alabama, and then what does he do? He transfers to Alabama. Like, are you kidding me, Nick Saban? Why? Like, why do you need Jermaine Burton on your team? You have Bryce Young. Obviously, you are losing Mechie and you are losing Williamson, so you did need some veteran receiving on your team, which he got Jermaine Burton, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tyler Steen, like you said. So it's just it's incredible. It's really I have no words for what Nick Saban can do. He's definitely He's Voldemort, and we need to get rid of him already. It's time for him, but that's not going to happen this year.
That's going to be an amazing coaching search. Whenever he retires.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I've never prayed for someone's downfall. I don't want Nick Saban. I don't want anything bad to happen to Nick Saban, but I just want him to retire and get out of here. Just go live with I think his Miss Terry, that's his wife's name. Go live with Miss Terry in your ranch and retire and just live happy ever after and just leave us alone. Please leave us alone. So, but yeah, there's nothing that can be said, honestly. There's really no breakdown for Alabama. They're the evil empire, and they're going to continue to be the evil empire until somebody beats them, at least in the SEC. So that's pretty much it. But there is one team that did beat them, Dan. There's one team that did beat them, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs. They toppled the evil empire last year, only for them to come back even stronger, right? But this is about Georgia. They're defending national champions. And a lot of the teams that we've talked about so far it's always every team that we've talked about actually besides these two is, can they beat Alabama? Can they beat Georgia? And for the last, 4 or 5 years, since Kirby Smart has been at the helm at Georgia, nobody in the SEC East has been able to really beat them. Sure, you've had that one fluke loss to South Carolina. You had that loss to Florida when they had Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, and obviously a very generational talent at quarterback and at tight end. But that's it. Other than that, they've dominated the SEC East, and I don't expect anything different this year. They did lose a lot of talent. They broke the record for most players drafted in an NFL draft history. I think they got 19 players drafted. So they are replacing a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but all that talent is there. They have, I think, probably the most underrated player that nobody's talking about is Jalen Carter. He's probably even better than Jordan Davis was. Jalen Carter is a beast, and he's gonna finally take control. He wasn't even a full-time starter last year, so to be the full-time starter, to bolster that defensive line, you're still bringing back Nolan Smith, you're still bringing back Christopher Smith, Keely Ringo, who sealed that national championship with that interception return for a touchdown. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you have Stetson Bennett, and look, everybody wants to bring down Stetson Bennett. And I see all of these quarterback rankings coming out for next year, and Stetson Bennett is nowhere near the top. But if you really look at it and break it down, Stetson Bennett can play. You don't win a national championship without having a good quarterback. I mean, you have to have decent quarterback play. And if you look at the numbers, he's been up there. He's ranked top 5 in the SEC and even top 5 in the country in some categories in passing percentage. I think he ranked in the top 5 in passing percentage over 20 yards. I mean, he can sling the ball, and just a lot
of the efficiency metrics are
exactly. He's a very efficient quarterback. And sure, you do lose Jermaine Burton, but you lose guys like Jermaine Burton. You lose guys like oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Jesus Christ. No. Who's the receiver? He's my team, and I can't even think about his name. The receiver that
Pickens?
Pickens, yeah, George Pickens. Oh my God, I can't believe I blanked on George Pickens. You're bringing back
George Pickens blanks on George Pickens.
Yeah, you lose George Pickens, you lose Jermaine Burton, but we talked about him. Brock Bowers is coming back. Eric Gilbert, who is, he was the best receiver. He's the best tight end as a freshman at LSU. He's in the fold now. He missed last year with mental health issues, but he's back, and he looked amazing in the spring. That's probably the greatest tight end core that we've ever seen. Oscar Delp, he's a freshman coming in. He's basically Brock Bowers 2.0.
Come on.
And then you have Darnell Washington, is big-bodied, really tall, big dude as a tight end as well. So you have the talent on the offensive side of the ball. So I would watch out for this Georgia offense. All the talk's always been about the defense, and their defense might not be as good as it's been. They won't have the generational defense they had last year, but I think this offense can pick them up. So I would expect Georgia to be back in the fold next year for sure, or this coming season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best rosters in the country. Just the question is, the defense, such a historically good defense like last year, it means that the bar for the offense can be lower. As the defense takes a step back away from historically great to just merely, excellent, the bar gets a little bit higher for the offense. And you list a lot of really, really great players that hopefully can take them there to get back, not just to Atlanta, because I think getting back to Atlanta is pretty safe bet. And I think they'll handle that schedule 12-0, maybe 11-1 if they just have a bad Saturday. I don't see 10-2. I just don't even see that. But bless you. But I think that one of Saban's greatest strengths is that ability to take a roster that just reached the pinnacle, a team that just achieved everything, and then get those guys to return back to full hunger and engage fully the next year. There's no hangovers in Tuscaloosa. And, I think Kirby is cut from that same kind of maniac cloth as his mentor. So I don't think there's a hangover. I think, they won't be the greatest defense I've ever seen as a college football fan. But I think they're still going to be a top 3, probably number 1 defense in the country and back in Atlanta again for another repeat. So, all right. So that's the SEC team by team. Let's go a little lightning round. Just kind of hit some kind of hot button topics around the league. Let's start with some breakout players. I have 3 guys that I think are going to break out and have good years, all on the offensive side of the ball. Looking ahead for the fantasy leagues for a couple years down the line, right? But I think Jermaine Burton in Alabama, I think he wanted to get with a quarterback that can get him some better tape for the NFL draft coming up. He's a blue chip guy, and he'll stretch the field there and have a quarterback that can kind of push the ball vertically and create some plays there. And I think he unlocked some of the same things that Jamison Williams did last year for Alabama. And, I think for college football nerds, he's a pretty well-known name, but he's not a household name yet. But I think he will be by October. So I like Nathaniel Pete breaking out in Missouri, getting a lot of those Tyler Beatty carries. And I like Jarquez Hunter, the running back there in Auburn, big guy, kind of balancing with Bigsby for a great 1-2 punch. Even though I don't think the Tigers have a great year, I really do like Hunter breaking out, forming a great backfield duo there.
Yeah, I kind of go offense as well as my breakout players. Obviously, Georgia turns out those running backs like a factory, and I think Kenny McIntosh is going to be one of those breakout guys. There's obviously with the Georgia running back room, there's always they rotate guys out, but I think Kenny McIntosh could definitely take that next leap and solidify himself as the next great running back for Georgia.
That's about lineage too. It's
good
names.
Yeah, definitely. It's been for a few years now that they've had great running backs. Kendall Milton is one of those guys too, but I think Kendall Milton and McIntosh are going to kind of carry the load, but I think McIntosh might break out a little bit more than Kendall Milton will. I also have another running back. I have Zach Evans as well. I think that Zach Evans in that offense with Lane Kiffin is going to be able to do some great things. I think he can solidify himself as one of the best running backs in the SEC and put up monster numbers. I expect that for sure to be the case moving forward. And another Georgia guy, I'm sorry, I'm going to be biased again. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter, he was behind, he was in the shadows a little bit behind that great defensive line of last year with Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean and Channing Tindall and those types of guys last year. But I think he is going to be the best defensive player, definitely for Georgia, and he could possibly be the best defensive player in the SEC up there with Will Anderson. So those are my breakout players for next year.
So let's do some players of the year. Is he your choice for defensive player of the year?
He is he is the choice for defensive player of the year for me. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter for sure.
I'm going to go with Will Anderson, even though I do have a hot take about Will Anderson to come. For offensive player of the year, I'm going to go with a sleeper for offensive player of the year. I think the Alabama guys are all going to kind of split the vote there. That three-headed attack of Gibbs, Young, and Burton. I think I like Devin Achane at A&M just to put up just some lottery numbers, Powerball numbers there, and take home Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I went a little bit more traditional. I went with Bryce Young. I just think that it's year 2 for him as a starter. So I think he's just going to get even better. And they were able to kind of reload the weapons on offense for him with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jermaine Burton. So I think Bryce Young, he's going to run away with Offensive Player of the Year. I don't think there's much question about that.
I mean, I'm definitely the one taking the big flyer. So
yeah,
he's great. Bryce Young, definitely. Alabama, they're good. You heard it here first.
yeah, definitely right. He's very, very good.
So for 2 other awards, we have the Newcomer of the Year. We have the Coach of the Year. Newcomer of the Year, I'm going to go with the Homer pick, and I'm going to take Luther Burden. There are a lot of great freshmen, of course, always in the SEC, a lot of great transfers. We hit on a ton of them, Michael Trigg, Jaden Hazelwood. But Luther Burden is going to come in and make a name for himself right away. And he's going to do it at a school that, doesn't always have great impact players at the skill position. And he's going to get a lot of energy and a lot of talent, a lot of excitement, a lot of talent in that kid. And Luther Burden, Newcomer of the Year to the SEC. Oh, also because he is going to probably not the bulk of kicks, but he's definitely going to take a kick to the house this year.
So the Newcomer of the Year. So I was debating whether it was Freshman of the Year or just Newcomer to the SEC, and we both kind of agreed it's a Newcomer to the SEC. So I went with Jahmyr Gibbs. I kind of the same reason why you did. He's definitely going to return kicks. He's explosive on the returning game. He should be able to he has the ability to return kicks back for touchdowns. He's going to be part of the offensive power house down in Alabama. So he'll be able to run the ball. He's going to be able to catch the ball. And he's definitely going to return kicks. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs for me is a Newcomer of the Year.
Okay. Like I said, I'm all in on Tennessee breaking out this year. And I think that Josh Heupel has set the bar high down there with Rocky Top. I think they're going to meet those and maybe even surpass those expectations. Josh Heupel for Coach of the Year. It's easy to give it to the 2 big guys at those 2 powerhouse schools. I think, getting a team cresting that hill, coming on the rise, they love that. So that's why I think that Heupel gets Coach of the Year.
My Coach of the Year is going to be Sam Pittman. I think he's going to lead Arkansas to be at that level and be close to winning the ACC East. They're probably not going to win the SEC East, but I think that they could be in that conversation. And I think winning 10, 11 games could put him in that conversation. So I think Sam Pittman is Coach of the Year. Okay.
Let's fire off some hot takes. Get the Twitter machine outraged. I think Tennessee is going to make Georgia sweat. I wanted to pick them to Alabama or to Atlanta, but I can't do it. I can't pull the trigger. Georgia's still going to make the SEC East, SEC championship out of the East, but Tennessee is going to make you sweat it out. I think that Auburn is going to finish last in the West, and that Brian Harsin will be fired mid-season. Maybe after week 3, lost to Penn State. Maybe after week 4, lost to your Missouri Tigers. Could be. We'll see. I think he gets canned in the middle of the year. Is that hot of a take? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Maybe the Missouri loss is what elevates a hot take. And my hottest take is that Will Anderson will not lead the Alabama Crimson Tide in sacks. I think he's going to be the focus of protections. And Dallas Turner is a stud on the other side. Will Anderson will still be the best player and still win Defensive Player of the Year. But his presence draws that attention. And Dallas Turner will get a few more quarterbacks onto the ground and lead the league in sacks, not Will Anderson.
So, yeah, no, he'll be a beast, but I think I could see that happening. So my three hot takes are all related to each other. And they're hot takes because I don't think they're going to happen, but they're hot takes for a reason. So I think Texas A&M is going to beat Alabama and make it to the SEC championship game. I think that Arkansas is going to make a New Year's Six Bowl, which isn't that hot of a. It's not that hard of a take, but it is when you hear the next point. My third hot take is Alabama will lose 2 games. They're going to lose to Arkansas and they're going to lose to Texas A&M. So those are my 3 hot takes.
Spicy.
Yeah, it's extremely hot. I don't know if it's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen, but they're hot takes for me. If Texas A&M and Arkansas can put together great, good games that could beat Alabama. So those are my 3 hot takes.
Okay. So for New Year's Six and conference title, I have Alabama over Georgia in Atlanta for the title. I'm going chalk there. And I think that there will be 4 SEC teams in the New Year's Six. Alabama as the playoff representative, Georgia, A&M, and Tennessee rounding out New Year's Six bowls. None of them cracking the playoff, just because I think a few other great teams throughout the sport will. But Alabama in the playoff. And
So for me, if I continue with my hot take, I think that Georgia will beat A&M in the SEC championship game. But if it stays chalk, I think Alabama will beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. So I'm kind of,
rock, paper, scissors here.
Yeah, exactly right. Rock, paper, scissors between those two. My New Year's Six bowls, I do have Georgia in the college football playoff. Like I said, again, if my hot prediction comes through, A&M, Arkansas, and Tennessee will make New Year's Six bowls as well. If it stays chalk, obviously Alabama will be up there, and then A&M and Tennessee will round out the New Year's Six bowls as well. So Arkansas is kind of like the wild card in this scenario for sure.
Okay, gotcha. We're both in on Tennessee.
Yeah, I think Tennessee will be very good. I really do.
Nothing bad has ever happened when you buy high on Tennessee. That's never fallen through.
Right.
All right, folks. Thank you for spending time with us and listening to our thoughts on the SEC 2022 season. If you enjoyed what we have to say about college football, make sure to follow us. Brian, you're over there on Twitter at Acuna Batflip. I'm on Twitter at MOYCFW. At MOYCFW. This fall, I'll be writing a series called Mapping Out Your College Football Weekend, weekly previews. That's where I get that name from. So go ahead and make sure that you like and subscribe to Transfer Portal CFB. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Go ahead. We're going to have a giveaway at 1,000 followers on YouTube. So if you like these hot takes and more about the NL East, go ahead and give Brian and I a follow on Twitter. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. And,
thank you.
See ya.
Go Dogs.
MIZ.